G'day, welcome to Pay It Forward. Today, bit of change of direction. I was in a colourful mood. Well, that's not a change of direction for me, but I thought I would create a beautiful little crossbody bag. I've been putting this one off. I don't know why. I had such a great time with it this week, and I have promised it to so many of you. Little vintage camper, and it works beautifully in this design. Now this little bag is quite structured and it's fully lined. It's got little pockets inside. Very much a boutique style little bag. If you've made my little Marie bag, my little kitty bag, you won't have any problems with this one at all. Made very similar. Beautiful flash of colour on the underside and inside there. You can dive into your stash. Pull out those colourful fat quarters that you don't know what to do with. This is a perfect project. So I've got your free pattern ready for you. It is in the description box below. You need to be setting your printer to be printing at actual size, and you also need to be using A4 paper. Use the measuring bar guides on your pattern templates. That will show you that your pattern pieces are correct. And remember that I always include all seam allowances within my patterns. So let's get busy making a gorgeous bag. Now let's first have a look at our materials and requirements we're going to need to make our bag. So we are going to start with the outer bag, and I'm using a cotton duck cloth this time. If you've never used duck cloth, give it a go. It's absolutely beautiful fabric. It's like linen but much easier to work with, and it's not too heavy weight, but it's good for bags. So this is my front, my outer bag front and back. The front has the little height in it for the top of the camper van, and I have interfaced those pieces with my usual fusible woven cotton interfacing. So it keeps everything nice and flexible but gives you some strength. We need a base for the bottom of the bag. Now I'm lining my bag in this fabric. So for the base, I'm using the same fabric that's also interfaced, and it's going to have a little bit of turn up. So you do get a little glimpse of that colour popping out from the underside, which is what I like. Of course, you can do any colour scheme you like. So for the outer bag pieces, we have the addition of some fusible foam. So fusible foam pieces, you've got your templates there. You can use fusible wadding for this if you'd like. I love the fusible foam. It really gives it some bounce and substance, and the little bag really holds itself well. So you've got your base piece, and then you've got your back and your front pieces as well. It's fusible on one side. You can buy it fusible on both sides. I don't ever recommend that unless you need it particularly to be fusible on both sides. This one is much easier to work with. So we only have those on the outer pieces. So that's our outer bag done. And then we move on to our lining. So as I said, I'm using that lovely fabric for the lining, nicely coordinating with that mustard yellow. We've got our front and back piece, and again, they are interfaced. This is just a quilting cotton. I've also got a second base cut, exactly the same as this one. So they are all interfaced as well. So you've got your second one. The lining pieces don't need any of that fusible foam. Inside that little bag, we're going to be adding a pocket. So a little fold over double pocket, which is really cute. And I like to use a contrasting pretty print. So when you open up that bag, you see that pretty little change of print. And that is just your two pieces. It's cut exactly the same, and they have no interfacing on them. We're going to need some fabric for a strap, or you could use some cording, whatever you like. I do find that if you make yourself a little strap, not only does it look more tailored, it also is easier to insert into the sides of the bag. Now I cut this piece to be 1 metre long and 6 centimetres across. And then you can see that I take it to my iron. I actually rule a line right down the centre, and I first iron the two outer edges into the middle, and then I fold it over, line it all up, and give that a good press. And this is the width of our strap. So, and as I said, you could do that with cord. Mine is 1 metre long to suit me, to sit just perfectly as a crossbody on me, but you might want to check that measurement. If you want to make it for a child, of course, you're going to have to reduce that down. So that's the internal parts of our bag all done. We will be adding, well, I will be adding a little magnetic closure just on the inside of the lining so the top of the little tote can just clip shut. I'm using a tiny little magnet. Ideally, you would have a 20mm one of these. I've only got these little ones at the moment, but they're very strong, so it will work just as well. If you haven't added these before, they're really quick and easy. Alternatively, you can just sew on a couple of snap fasteners on the inside, or don't add a fastening at all, because it is a little narrow top on this tote, and you can just have it sitting open. I just like that extra security of being able to pull that shut. I've also got a little D-ring and a little split ring because I want to add a bag charm at the end, so I have a little swivel hook as well. This is all extra notions that you don't have to add, totally up to you. So then we need our little actual camper. So the details for that, this is going to be ironed onto the front of the bag. So we have our little camper shape. That one is actually backed in fusible webbing because we're going to be pressing it in place. I did interface this fabric first and then added the fusible webbing just because it's a little bit see-through and I didn't want that check to show through. Make sure when you are cutting your pieces that you are reversing them the right way for the front of the bag and the camper to be going the right way. Make sure that you think that through. Next we have our little strip that goes on our camper, and that is cut from felt. These pieces I find look better if they're cut from felt. The whole thing looks better if there's a little bit of substance there across the base. So that has the fusible webbing applied as well. And then the additional pieces are cut from felt and fusible webbing. We've got that little wheel arch that goes in. Of course, we've got the door and that window. And when you're choosing your colours here, try and choose something that's a much stronger colour for these 3 pieces because they are the framework for your window and for your door and to put your wheel on, so it just looks more realistic if it's a little darker. And then you can add any kind of print you like for the centre pieces, and I've gone for another print. It's quite tight and tiny, and it works with all my other colours. And this is our little window detail of the curtains and that little door section there. We will be adding a little light, a little traditional domed light there. I'm going to add an extra little light at the back. And of course, you can embellish these any way you like. So I've got 2 options for the wheel. I'm doubling up buttons here. So I may well do a blue wheel with that little cream centre, or I may switch it out and do the black wheel with the blue centre. When I get to that point, I'm going to have a look at all of my colours and decide, just so I've got a couple of options there. So we're ready to start, and we are going to start this one. We're going to start with the lining. You will need some extra strong thread here and there for your overcasting at times, and you will need your machine colours, your machine threads, something we're going to be doing machine appliques. It's something that matches and works with your colour prints. We're going to start with our lining of our bag. So the first thing we need to do is we are going to sew up our pocket section. So it's very simple. You just need to leave an opening at the side where we're going to sew all the way around, just a 4mm seam allowance. Keep it nice and small and make sure you reinforce your corners. Then we're going to turn it through and we're going to push all of those corners out and also turn those edges under. I'm going to get this one sewn up and turned through and pressed. I can show you how that looks. So you can see there that I've turned that little rectangle through I've pressed the edges under of that opening, and then I've just folded it up. And you can make that whatever size you like. You can also change the size and shape of your pocket. Easy enough to do because it's just a rectangle. So I've just got a small amount of turn up, so I'm going to have a more shallow pocket here and then the deeper pocket all the way down. You want to make sure that you've got it centered. I'm adding it to the right side of my back lining piece. It works better on the back, I think. And then you want to make sure that it's centered, so make sure you take a measurement and make sure that it is nice and level across here. And now I'm just going to sew just from the top here. Make sure you back and forth on your start and finish, and also the start of this little pocket flap down across and up to the top there, and then that will be nicely in place. And there you can see that little pocket nicely in place, all ready to go. So our next step, if you're going to be adding your fastenings, we're going to do that now. These little pieces that you've got that clamp on the back of your little magnetic fastener, you pop that over the little center mark and you draw two little lines there. That's where we make two little cuts. So I'm going to use the receiving side. I've made those two little marks, and those little pieces will go straight through. Turn that one over, bring that a little closer. You can see that I've pushed those two little prongs through there. Make sure that fabric is all the way pushed down. We're going to add that little disc on the back, and then you want to grab something like some little pliers just to get your initial turn in there with those little tabs. And then we're just going to flatten those out. Same with the other side. Some are easier than others. These ones are quite firm considering their size. I guess firm is good. And then that's nice and flat. And it's a great attachment. Super simple to do. Do the same thing with the other side. That's your receiving side there. And that's how we'll pop them together. That's going to help us line it all up too. So our next step is exactly that. We are going to go ahead and sew our side seams. So with right sides together, I'm going to line up these two edges here and here, and we're going to sew with a 5mm seam allowance. We're going to sew just down to the base, and make sure you back and forth on your start and finish, top and bottom, and the same with the other side. Then I'm going to go ahead and press that seam out nice and open and flat. So now with those two side seams done, you can see I've pressed them open and flat. We're now going to add our base. So that's easily put in. Because we've got that seam open and flat, we can see right in the center. We're going to take our base piece and line up that center mark and take a pin straight through that 5mm seam allowance and make sure that it's going right straight through the center of that seam. I do the same on the other side. So everything's well lined up. If you've kept to your seam allowances here, you'll find this base piece will fit in beautifully. You can sew it all on the machine, but I do like to overcast it in first. So now we're simply going to pin that in, fit those edges together. So pin through both layers, flip it over, and just take a little bit of the fabric on the other side, and we'll pin it in a 3D fashion. Again, through all the layers, flip it over, take a little bit up of the fabric, push your pin head all the way down. You can see it makes it much easier for pinning this shape into place. Most of you are absolute pros at this by now. It's just like pinning in a foot pad. I'm going to get it pinned in right the way around. You can see how nicely that base piece fits in. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my extra strong thread, and I'm just going to sew an overcasting stitch around that whole edge so that I can remove my pins. Makes it easier to sew that in on the machine just with the overcasting in place. What we do need to do is leave an opening in the lining, because through the lining is where we turn the entire bag through. So I just leave, it's about a 10 centimetre opening on one of the straightest sides. So make sure that you go back and forth on your start and finish as you're sewing. So I'm going to get that base plate all overcast first and then machine stitched into place. There we go, so that one all turned through. Now that base is sewn in. I also did push out all of those seams, and I've just pressed under that opening for now, so that's all ready to go. We can put that one aside. Next, let's just go ahead and make this strap. If you're sewing a strap, you can also buy little detachable straps. They're not very expensive, but I do like the look of this one. So as I said, we've got our rectangular piece. Mine measures 1 metre by 6 centimetres, and I have drawn a line all the way down the centre. Then I've pressed each side into the centre and then in half again. So that makes a nice neat strap. What I'm going to do now is take that to the machine, and I'm going to sew just a top stitch all the way down each side, very close to the edge, just a couple of millimetres in. It just gives it that lovely professional finish. And that completes our lovely strap. You can see that top stitching really does make a difference. Pop that one aside too. Now let's get started on the actual front applique work of our bag with our actual little caravan. So you've got your front piece. We're going to go ahead and take that caravan shape, remove that backing paper, and we're going to pop that one into place. Now you want to leave, it's about 1 centimetre. You'll find you've got room, about 1 centimetre space. Make sure that you've got it all lined up, that it's nice and straight across the base here. And you want to fuse that into place with a hot iron and a protective cloth. Now we need to leave room around that top, because we're going to be sewing that top seam all around, and then when we turn it through, we just want a small amount of that fabric showing. So I'm going to get that one pressed into place, and once I've done that, I'm going to add the next piece. So we do this in a certain way so that it makes our stitching easier. So after that one's pressed into place, go ahead and press that caravan strip into place also. All nice and flat. Always use a protective cloth. So now we're going to start with our machine stitching. So we're going to do this in a particular order. Now what I do like to do with mine is, because I'm using quite pale colours, well they're pale for me, I really want to outline these shapes. So I'm going for a darker tone, keeping with my colours. So I've got a deep sort of a claret colour here, which I'm going to outline the entire outside of my caravan with, and the different areas around the door and the window I'm going to be using a deeper blue. But what we're going to do is we're going to do it in pieces, because certain pieces like the door and the wheel arch go over and cover this base, and I like to only sew that base section once. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to just stitch this line here straight across, and we're going to sew that with a satin stitch on the machine, which is just a really close zigzag stitch, and I keep it very narrow, so about 3.5 in width, and I bring my stitch length down to just below 1. So it's really just a very small little zigzag. I'm going to do it, and then you're going to see what I mean. It will give a lovely outline and make it just a little more bold. So that's the first one we add, and then we're going to iron on a couple more pieces. So there you can see that's really defined that edge, and it's a great finish, and it's really quick to do. So our next step is we're going to be fusing into place the door, which sits just at the front there, and the wheel arch, which covers that wheel. And we're going to get those pressed into place, again with a hot iron and a protective cloth. And then I can go ahead and sew that same stitch. I'm going to use that same colour, and I am going to stitch around the entire outside edge of that caravan, just that for now. So there we go, and now you can see it's just like drawing with thread applique, and you can see that dark outlines made all the difference. You see, you just have to trust me. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to add our window piece, and that is just going to sit there nicely in the middle. Give it a good centimetre from the line here, and it should just sit up a little above the line of your door, because then if everything's lined up, it doesn't always look very pleasing to the eye. So a little check that you've got room for your little dome light there, which we have. We're going to get that one pressed into place, and this time I'm going to take a deep blue and I'm going to stitch around the outside of the door and then the outside of the window frame and the top of that arch. Same stitch, that tight zigzag stitch. So now our final pieces to go on the door, the centre of the door, and I leave a little bit of space all the way around it. I don't take it right down to the base. It's much more attractive if it's just sitting right in the centre. And our curtain detail, which again, give it a nice outline. And I'm going to do the same thing, press those into place. And I might just reduce the width of my zigzag stitch to sew these pieces on. I'm going to sew them all the way around. I'm going to use that same dark blue that I've just used. And then I'm going to add a tiny little bit of straight stitching detail, which I will show you once that's done. So that completes all of our stitching, and you can see that what I've done with the curtains here, I've sewn that zigzag stitch around the outside, and then I've just sewn a straight stitch to mark out that shape of the edge and just gone across here and up the centre to separate those curtains, and it just gives that little bit of extra detailing. I hope you can see there. So now what we need to do is add our foam pieces to our side and back pieces, as I already have here, your fusible foam. You want to fuse them into place. You want to leave a space all the way around, and I'll do the same with this piece and also with your base piece. Make sure there's room all the way around it. Get those fused into place, and I like to do that on this piece before we add our buttons. So once we've done that, we're going to add all of our little button details. I have gone ahead now and added my button details. So I've got the little dome light there. If you can find a button that actually does have that domed effect, it works really well. I've added a tiny heart there for a handle on the door, an extra button just to indicate a light at the back, and I went for the big black button with the yellow, pale yellow in the middle for the tire, because it does make everything else pop. So I did have a couple of other colours I was looking at, but I do think that really just brings some lovely detail to it. So now we're going to start putting this one together. So what we're going to do is take our back bag piece and our front bag piece, and just as we did before with the lining, it's the same process. So our next step is to line up those side pieces, those side seams there. And again, making sure that you're keeping to your 5mm seam allowance. I'm going to stitch that one in place and the same on the other side. And then I'm going to give those seams, particularly at the base and the top, a good press so that they're open and flat. So there we have our side seam stitch. We're ready to add the base. You just add the base exactly the same as we did with the lining, where you take your centre marks on your base, line them up with your side seams, and I'm going to do that both sides. Then I'm going to overcast, pin it in, overcast it into place, then I'm going to sew that seam. This time I'm going to sew that seam all the way around, because we don't need to leave an opening with this one because we've already done that in our lining. So now I have the base sewn in and we are ready to put this bag together. So first thing you have to remember is to go ahead and add your strap. So you pop those in, lining them up exactly on that side seam. You can see there, and I've got those edges just stitched with my overcasting stitch both sides. You also want to make sure that when you add that strap that you don't twist it along the way. The other thing that I have done is I've added a little split ring as well, because I want to be able to add a bag charm. It's just a handy thing to have on the handle of your bag, so I would add it regardless. So a little split ring or a D ring will do it. So what we do to put this together is we have the outer bag inside out and we have our lining the right way. And now, obviously, we're going to make sure that we're popping it in the right way, that this is the front, this is the back of the bag, and we're just going to tuck that one in. And again, we're going to match up the side seams exactly. And we've got them all pressed nice and flat, so that makes it easier to do with not much bulk. And I usually use my clips for this. They come in super handy. So first of all, I just make sure that those two are lined up. Now again, if you've kept to your seam allowances throughout, this should all match up really well. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to pin or clip all of those edges together. It should be exactly the same size. You can see there that the little raised part of the caravan is going to match up there. I'm going to get that all pinned into place, and then I'm going to overcast it into place so that I can remove my pins and clips. Now that I have those edges all overcast together, my pins are gone and my clips are gone, I can now tuck this under the machine, and I'm going to sew that seam about 5 to 6 millimeters. You don't want to be coming in and sewing any deeper than where your applique is, sewing about 5 to 6 millimeters is just going to make it just about perfect. Stitch that all the way around and make sure that you go back and forth and strengthen where those side straps are. Get that all sewed in place and then we'll be able to turn it through. So I have that seam sewn all the way through, and now it's just a matter of reaching in to the lining section, grabbing all of that bag and pulling it all through that opening that we left in the lining. Super easy to pull through, even though we've got all of that padding in there, because we've left a large enough opening. Pull that all the way through and push out all of your seams. Roll all those seams out. Use a knitting needle if it helps you. And we will have instant bag. Pop that base out. I absolutely love the foam. It gives you such structure and it's still very flexible. So now, before we pop that lining back into the inside of the bag, remember that we've got that opening, and ahead of time I already pressed those edges under. You could slip stitch it closed by hand, but I'm just going to take it to the machine and stitch those edges together. They go at the bottom of the bag, we're never going to see that. Then I'm going to tuck that in and really roll out all of those seams along the top edge. So there we have our gorgeous little bag turned through. So cute, with the top line following the line of that little camper. And I've pressed that lining to the inside. Now I do like to have just the tiniest, it's about 1 millimeter of the lining showing just around the edge. And I am now going to take it back to the machine and I'm just going to top stitch very close to the edge on the front outer bag part, just to settle that into place and leave that little bit all the way showing, just to show that little bit of colour, that little pop of colour is really, really nice, just to finish it off. And so that, my friends, is our beautiful little vintage camper little crossbody bag, and it really is a super usable little bag. I've gone ahead and added a little bag charm that I've made up. This is just made up from fabric. I've actually got a video that shows you how to make little tassels out of felt. Mine's made up of fabric here, super easy. A couple of beads, a little piece charm in keeping with the design. One of my daughters loves to play with polymer clay, and she's made a tiny little toadstool. How cute is that? So I stole that one. It goes perfectly with the whole theme. I'm sure she won't mind. And of course, such a usable little bag with those little pockets inside, super cute inside. And as I said, if you add that fusible foam, such a usable little bag. I will style this one up, and I will put some photographs on Instagram, and you can see actually it being worn. I actually made it all in colours to suit an outfit that I have, so I will definitely show you that. If you're loving the vintage camper theme, of course, why not make up my little needle book? So gorgeous little needle book there. Perhaps make it up as a gift for someone who loves to go camping and caravanning. And also, of course, we've got the beautiful little vintage campers themselves, and they are just absolutely adorable, super easy to do. So those videos are all there for you too, free patterns. These make great little pin cushions. I just have them as ornaments. I absolutely love them. So I hope you've enjoyed that, something a little bit different. I have enjoyed every minute of it, and I would love it if you would tell me in the comments if you would like to see more novelty bags like this. So thank you all for joining me today. I've thoroughly enjoyed putting this one together. I hope you've enjoyed seeing it. If you have, you could give me a thumbs up. That would be absolutely beaut. I'm going to be styling this one up with an outfit, and I'm going to be sharing that on my Instagram page. My Instagram address is across the screen there now. You can pop in and see me there. You can certainly also talk to me one-on-one there. You can direct message me. So many of you do. I absolutely love it. I love chatting to you all, and it's a good way to connect. But if you do want one-on-one time with me, definitely do it through Instagram. I generally always see your messages there, and we have a whole lot of fun there too. So look for this little one all styled up in the next few days. Also, if you want to come and see everybody's results who are creating in masterclass, or right here on Pay It Forward, come and join our Facebook page, because you can post your own creations, because we want to see what you've done with my patterns as well. I love it when people play with my patterns and mix them up and do all sorts with them. I love that creativity. So I'm enjoying every bit of seeing your work, and I do like to select just little projects here and there and share your beautiful work on my Insta story as well. I'm enjoying doing that, and certainly the wider population are enjoying seeing them. So you're all doing so beautifully. Thank you all so much for your support. Thank you for supporting my Ollie cow. I wasn't sure how she would be received, but most people seem to like her. So you can always join Masterclass if you like to step up. I will put that link down below as well. So everybody have a fantastic creative week. I want to see lots of colourful bags, and style them up. Show us a picture with you wearing them. That'd be so cool. Looking forward to it all. Everybody stay safe. Keep on paying all of those good things forward. Until next time, it is hooroo from me.